Hi, and welcome. This is Derek Feldman, the CEO of Achieve, and we're going to be doing an interview today with Casey Golden. I'm pretty excited because Casey leads a pretty interesting company called Small Act, which their big piece is making a big impact in social media. Casey is actually the CEO of the company, and the current venture Small Act really kind of helps nonprofits get some relationships online, and at Achieve, that's a pretty important piece with us. Casey has actually authored a chapter in Do Your Giving While You're Living, which is actually a Business Week bestseller featuring internet resources for donors and nonprofits. He is a speaker at local and national events, National Press Club, book party components, everything you could ever imagine. And he actually recently won 35 Under 35 award actually for being the top entrepreneur in the greater DC area. So I'm so excited. Please welcome Casey. Casey, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks much, Derek. Pleasure to be here.
Well, okay, so you have to give us the spiel. What is Small Act? Because I know we're all sort of wondering, and for those of you who don't know, it's pretty important and pretty interesting. So Casey, why don't you give us a sense of what's going on?
Sure, absolutely. So what Small Act is focused on is we are focused solely on the nonprofit sector. So what we do is we help organizations of all sizes really sort of get results from social media. That's a very high-level way to think about it. There's a couple components that go into that. The first is making sure that the team can have the best communication platform, so communicating to and from Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, et cetera, but also at the core of everything, having a very, very strong sort of constituent database where you'll know exactly what your relationships are with the people that you're communicating. And the other part that we do is we actually help organizations find their most valuable and important people in the social world because those are really the ones that will help them get the sort of biggest results and go viral and really have the biggest donations and advocacy campaigns in the end. So we help them find great people and help nurture the relationship.
So it's interesting because when I first heard of Small Act, I was very impressed with the fact that you can help us, get some. I think it's we give you some emails and then you're able to identify some influencers. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So the way it works, the problem that most organizations currently have is they have a pretty significant email newsletter database or donor database, but they don't know how to get that into a vibrant social community. And so what we do is we'll take the emails from an organization and then give them the results of profiles for each person that exists in the social world. So we help them find, number one, who is out there, and then we give them the tools to segment based on platform and let's say location or influencer or subject category. So a typical example would be after we convert the emails into social profiles, they might say, well, I would like a list of all of my people who are on Facebook who are in California and have donated to us more than once. And so we actually generate that list, and actually they can become key influencers within the Facebook community within that set. So it's a really, really interesting way to segment and target based on information we provide.
What is the ideal organization, Casey? Because I'm thinking about followings, overall, and it's interesting because we have a lot of organizations who may not have a lot of emails. They're still working in the direct mail, older style fundraising approaches. So how would you, what's the ideal organization? The kind of emails that you need to have to really be effective with the strategy you're talking about?
It's a very, very good question. I think one of the things that we've found is that it is not as much about the community size as it is the strategy to engage. So certain communities may have a significantly smaller email base, let's say 1,000 emails, sometimes less. And so some organizations, especially perhaps associations and other types of organizations, but each one of those 1,000 is really important. And the other concern is that there's a significant sort of churn in email, about 18% a year typically. So they're losing emails that they have, but social profiles are really what they can sort of have in perpetuity, so they'll stay current for them. But that being said, organization size is really independent, but we help them find whether it's one MVP or 1,000, it's usually, we help them find about 40% of the people online, and then we help them really target the top 5%.
And so what? Let's imagine that we give you emails. You come back with some of the influencers or some of these MVPs you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How do I take that and sort of use that into action? What have you seen some organizations really do?
Great question. So some of the examples of what we've seen are once organizations get back the understanding of, this, let's say, just as a use case, they're really trying to boost their Facebook engagement, and they really want to do it in a meaningful way. So what they'll do is they'll look at the entire list that we bring back to them and really subset that into who's on Facebook. From there, what they'll do is typically they may do a broad campaign, but more than likely they'll actually combine the knowledge of the platform with a specific campaign. So, for example, Humane Society would take all of their people on Facebook who also are passionate about cats and ask them to submit their cat photo for Feline Friday. So giving a call to action is meaningful for the person, but in a method that they know that they're likely to respond. So it kind of contextualizes the platform of response, but also a meaningful content piece to coincide with the call to action.
Great. Interesting. And what have you seen, what's sort of the best organization story you can tell us about that is using your platform or of that has used this model of identifying influencers and then being successful in a campaign? Can you share a story with us?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. The exciting part is it's pretty nascent in terms of people being able to use data. So it's relatively new within the last 3 months. So the stories are continuing to unfold, if you will. But I think the three leaders that we've been interacting with so far are World Wildlife Fund, Defenders of Wildlife, and Humane Society. So all of those organizations have great stories about how they're actually using the data. So one just that jumps to mind is Defenders of Wildlife. There's a lot of legislation right now that is a terrible impact for a lot of endangered species. And so what they're doing is they're actually taking the data, and they're finding specific campaigns that will go onto Facebook in a couple different ways, as well as Twitter. So they're actually doing a multi-channel approach. What they're doing is they're actually looking for people who are specifically passionate about species that will become endangered. And what they're doing is they're contacting them, usually by email, unless they can do it on the platform, but by email, and asking them to participate on Facebook or Twitter to, number one, support them and their message development, so helping the message be spread to their friends and get out to as big of a network as possible, but also take specific action about reaching Congress people who are in their specific district, and they sort of will give them a landing page to go to take action that's relevant and can actually impact the legislation at hand. So that's just one example how they're using the big email base, but using it through Twitter and Facebook in a very publicly visible way so that the politicians and other advocacy analysts can actually see, whoa, this is really touching a chord within people in my district, and then continue on to actually sort of, add their signature to the vote, et cetera.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, it is pretty cool. All right, so I have to ask, where is social media going? What are you seeing from the lens of your work through helping organizations identify influencers? And, then a follow-up to that would be, how do we as organizations sort of prepare ourselves? So where are we going? Where are we headed?
Sure. I think one of the most interesting and valuable places that social media can go from here is helping all other parts of the organization, not the communicators. I think so far what is the case is that most of the communicators can find great tools to help them do their specific job and responsibilities really well. The next stage, though, is really sort of using the data that is generated in social media to inform the development officers. So who are my prospective donors or accounts that I manage who I should follow up with this week because they're actively talking about a relevant subject, or they've had a life change, right? So in the profiles we have things like LinkedIn profiles and things that publicly have shared with the world at large. And so if they have a job change, a location change, things like that, they'll actually be notified that says, hey, one of your key prospects has just changed their job or location. So giving them windows of opportunity to deepen their relationship with key donors. That's something, they're not communicating by social media to go back to them, but they'll pick up the phone, give them a call, send them an email, congratulations, whatever that is. So that's one example. So they can move to the sales wing, the fundraising aspect. It can also, and it's continuing to influence even direct mail and email newsletters, where the National Wildlife Federation found that at the end of last year, they as an organization had gone past oil spills, but what they found is their online leaders, they're still talking about that, and that's the most attractive content that gets shared, and so they retooled their end-of-year campaigns based on the data that they found in social media. So again, changing direct mail, changing email based on social findings for key relationships. And I think underneath it all, making sure that the relationships are solid, and even to the very upper levels of the organization, the CXOs and executive directors, making sure they're well informed of what's going on. They don't have to participate in social media necessarily, but it's very, very good for them to be informed about all the decisions they make, with respect to their board members and other sort of key things that are on their agenda that contain really important elements that are extracted from the social media landscape. So that's a couple examples, but the overall trend, I think that communications platforms are maturing, and in the next 12 to 18 months, it's really extracting the data pieces to really empower the rest of the organization to do an even better job.
Yeah. So, and how do you see mobile really affecting that too?
That's a good question. I see mobile increasing the amount of data that can be used to make smart decisions. I think that the mobile sort of escalation of everybody even getting smartphones and compared to just regular phones, that dramatically helps the number of people who are likely to engage in social media. So I think that's the sort of hand-in-hand accelerator. The more mobile, the more social. And so the more social, the better data that people can have. And it also allows organizations to become more of a daily presence in one of their constituents' lives. So they don't have to sort of ask all the time. They can give better storytelling and then sort of ask at the right time. So I think that's actually a great way that is going to increase the amount of philanthropy intake of the general consumer public. 10 pieces of the 190 they receive a day, right?
Right.
And so if we can increase to that level, the knowledge and awareness of what's going on in the world, I think will dramatically increase the amount of participation as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Well, Casey, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate the time that you had, short that we did, but I really enjoyed hearing a little bit about your work at Small Act. And obviously, if you're interested in Small Act, head to smallact.com. And Casey, do you have anything upcoming that we should be aware of that some of our listeners might want to know about?
Well, we have a lot of great releases, actually. We have some things coming up to introduce some great new products, especially on the profiling side. So if anybody's interested in a test profile set, we can arrange that. But also, if any of the people are in the D.C. area, we're actually going to have an event in late May, early June of kind of getting like-minded people in the area all together. We typically have about 150 people from nonprofits sort of, get together and share ideas and best practices around a certain subject. So, be sure to get on our list for that as well.
Absolutely. Well, Casey, thanks again. I appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thanks. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. And we'll look forward to our next interview. And thank you again to Small Act, and definitely head to smallact.com. Thanks.